Imagine this. You've been walking for almost 10 hours. Your stomach is empty. Your legs are shaking. The only thing keeping you moving is the thought of finally eating tonight. Then, you get lucky. A wild deer wanders into range. One spear, one perfect throw. Dinner. You drag the animal all the way back to your camp. Your family is waiting. The fire is already burning. But when you arrive, the meat is gone. Someone took it. No police, no prisons, no locks, no laws, just hungry people trying to survive another day. So what happened next? Did ancient humans hunt down food thieves? Did they fight? Did they forgive them? Or did they solve the problem in a way that sounds completely impossible today? Because if you think stealing food was just another crime, think again. For most of human history, food wasn't money. Food wasn't comfort. Food wasn't even just survival. Food was tomorrow. Lose one meal, and you didn't just go to bed hungry. You became weaker, a weaker hunter, a slower runner, an easier target. One stolen meal could begin a chain reaction that lasted for weeks, which raises another question. If food was that valuable, why didn't everyone simply hide it? The answer is surprisingly strange. For almost all of human history, people didn't live in cities. They didn't even live in villages. Most ancient humans spent their lives in tiny groups of around 20 to 50 people. That's it. Imagine spending your entire life with the same 40 faces. You hunted together. You slept beside each other. You raised children together. You depended on each other every single day, which meant something very important. If someone stole your food, you couldn't just leave. Tomorrow morning, you'd still wake up next to them, and the next day, and the day after that. Suddenly, the problem wasn't just the stolen food. It was how to keep the group from falling apart. For a long time, scientists assumed the answer was violence. Hungry people, limited food, no laws. It seemed obvious. But over the last few decades, anthropologists studying some of the world's last hunter-gatherer societies discovered something unexpected. Many groups rarely fought over food at all. In fact, some almost prevented food theft before it could even happen. How? By doing something that seems completely backwards. They shared it, not because they were generous, but because it gave them a better chance of surviving. And once researchers understood why, they realized something surprising. The real currency of the ancient world wasn't food. It was trust. At first, that doesn't make any sense. Imagine spending an entire day chasing an animal, finally catching it, only to hand pieces of it to people who didn't help. Why would anyone do that? Because ancient humans understood something that most of us never have to think about. Tomorrow, today, you caught a deer. Tomorrow, you might catch nothing. The day after that, nothing again. Out in the wild, success was never guaranteed. Some hunters came home with enough food for everyone. Others came home empty-handed. It wasn't always about skill. Sometimes the weather changed. Sometimes the animals disappeared. Sometimes you were simply unlucky. So instead of asking, who deserves this food today, many groups asked a different question: who might feed me tomorrow? Anthropologists call this reciprocal sharing. The idea is simple. Today, I help you. Tomorrow, you help me. It wasn't charity. It was survival. And over thousands of years, groups that shared food survived more often than groups where everyone fought for themselves. But sharing created another problem. What happened when someone kept taking without ever giving back? This is where ancient humans became surprisingly modern, because they didn't just remember who brought food. They remembered who they could trust. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer societies found that people paid incredibly close attention to cooperation, who always volunteered to hint, who disappeared when work needed to be done, who shared fairly, and who always seemed to eat first. Your reputation became something far more valuable than a full stomach, because once people stopped trusting you, everything changed. The next hunt became harder. People stopped choosing you as a partner. Conversations became quieter when you walked over. Food wasn't offered as quickly. No one needed to announce a punishment. The group simply stopped depending on you. And in the Stone Age, that was terrifying, because surviving alone wasn't just difficult. For most people, it was almost impossible. One person couldn't hunt large animals efficiently. One person couldn't stay awake every night watching for predators. One injured ankle, one infected cut, one harsh winter could end everything. That's why trust became one of humanity's greatest survival tools. But here's the part that surprised scientists the most. Ancient humans didn't always ask, who stole the food? Sometimes they asked something much more important. Why? That question changed everything. Imagine two people taking food that didn't belong to them. The first steals because they're lazy. They avoid hunting. They avoid gathering. They wait for everyone else to do the work. Then they quietly take the reward. The second steals because their child hasn't eaten in 2 days. Same action, completely different reason. Anthropologists believe many hunter-gatherer societies understood that difference. They weren't judging the food, they were judging the intention. A hungry family could often be helped. A selfish person was much harder to trust. And once trust disappeared, life became dangerous. Because survival wasn't about being the strongest person in the tribe. It was about being the person others wanted beside them, the one they chose for the next hunt, the one they trusted to watch the children, the one they believed would share when times became difficult. That's why many researchers think our ancestors evolved something we still carry today. An incredibly sensitive radar for fairness. Think about the last time someone cut in front of you in a line, or took credit for your work, or grabbed the last slice of pizza without asking. You probably reacted instantly. Not because the reward itself mattered that much, but because your brain detected something much older: unfairness. For hundreds of thousands of years, people who constantly took without giving back threatened the entire group. And groups that couldn't stop selfish behavior often became weaker. Nature quietly rewarded cooperation, generation after generation, until it became part of who we are. So, what actually happened when someone stole food? Sometimes they were forgiven. Sometimes they were confronted. Sometimes they simply lost the trust of everyone around them. And in the ancient world, that could be a far greater punishment than violence. Because a spear could injure you once, but losing your tribe could cost you everything, which brings us back to today. The next time someone takes your food or someone behaves unfairly, notice how quickly that feeling appears. It feels like a modern emotion, but it isn't. Long before cities, long before money, long before history was ever written, your ancestors were solving the exact same problem, not with courts, not with prisons, but with something far more powerful. Trust, because food kept ancient humans alive for another day. But trust is what kept our species alive long enough to build the world you live in today. And maybe that's the strangest part of all. The anger you feel when someone takes what isn't theirs didn't begin with you. It began around a campfire tens of thousands of years ago, and your brain has never forgotten it.